Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at Marathon using the RX 9070 XT. We're using the ASRock Steel Legend version of the card with 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 video memory, playing on the latest AMD drivers and pairing with a 9800X3D as well as 64 gigabytes of DDR5. Let's hop in. All right, so we're going to be starting off here at 1080p. I did do some very preliminary testing here and found the game to be actually pretty well optimized, that we will take a look at exactly how well optimized it is. Does seem to be pretty CPU intensive. So starting off at 1080p, field of view maxed out. Again, in my preliminary testing, that did not have a major impact on any sort of performance. In fact, I didn't see any performance impact, though field of view at times can result in like very, very minor. I'm talking like 0.5 or less % difference in performance. So I don't expect a huge difference here. Now for 1080p, given the results that I already found, I'm actually going to go for the highest possible preset. That's puts us on FSR at native and maxing everything out. I just want to double check here, make sure. I think, yeah, there's one screen space ambient occlusion that doesn't go, but I believe that's the only one. Oh, and foliage detail distance, light shafts, make sure we turn that on. Motion blur I'll turn off. Otherwise, at least to begin with here, let's just go for no anti-aliasing, so just a raw 1080p picture. UI refresh rate, leaving that at high as well. NVIDIA Reflex, I'm not sure why this is showing up. Maybe I'm not super, smart, but I thought the NVIDIA Reflex was a NVIDIA specific setting. But regardless, this is maxed out 1080p. We'll go ahead and make sure we apply our settings, hop in, and then we'll test some of those upscaling options if we need them. Now, as you can see loading in here, immediately you'll notice that the menus are running very high, 300 plus FPS in the menus. I didn't see an option to limit FPS in menus. I do like when games sometimes like they limit FPS to say like, 120 or, the best is if you have manual control in the menus and then kind of have it unlocked. But you can see right off the bat just how CPU demanding this title is. 80% CPU utilization. Our CPU luckily is staying pretty cool, but we'll see exactly how that looks as we kind of continue on. And I believe, oh shoot, I may have actually done a fill here, so we'll have some people to benchmark with us here. But you can see right away coming in just how demanding this is on the CPU end. So it is well performing at 1080p, getting 160 FPS. Game looks beautiful. I will say the lack of anti-aliasing isn't really a huge issue as far as I can tell here. It looks still pretty decent. I know my head's kind of in the way there, but frame times look great. 1% lows at 115, average at 175. Our CPU utilization is astronomical here. So we'll see playing through a little bit if that does kind of self-correct. The lack of anti-aliasing, if you look closely at stuff, you can kind of tell that maybe, there could be a little bit of improvement when it comes to anti-aliasing. So I will check out the FSR options, if nothing else, just for the the anti-aliasing, not so much the upscaling. Obviously, our performance itself here is not really leaving anything to be desired. This game does have a very unique art style. Like, I actually really am into the art style of this particular game. I think it looks pretty cool. Looks like our guy here disconnected, so fortunately doesn't look like we're gonna be having a super easy time if we run into another group at least. But yeah, you can see, even with, like some combat, no dips or anything, seems to be holding on really, really well. So right around like 170, 180 as far as our average. 1% lows in an extremely respectable spot, around 118. Game looks beautiful here, high settings for sure. So let's go ahead and see what we can get if we did just want to apply that FSR just at a native option here. So we'll go ahead and make sure we apply those changes. This should resolve any sort of anti-aliasing issue. Now, FSR at native sometimes doesn't look always, or doesn't, always offer great performance, but here you can see it does resolve those anti-aliasing issues. No stutter stepping or flickering off the distance or anything like that. Seems to be a really, really good experience here, as well as my teammate seems to be getting shot at by something over here. Yeah, no major, issue when it comes to the actual, I actually think this might be another team here, but no major issue when it comes to the performance whatsoever. Getting maybe a little bit lower now that we are in a bit of combat, but still definitely solid experience. Let's see if we can maybe even get a few eliminations here. This definitely does seem to be a more aggressive experience than what I'm used to in arc raiders. Arc raiders is typically a lot more kind, at least most of the time, not always, but we'll see if our buddy here picks us up. So yeah, I mean, in general, I don't have any complaints. This looks great. It's performing well. No major problems whatsoever. I am curious to see if we can tell if there is an FSR upgrade that is implemented. If I can get my overlay to kind of work correctly. It doesn't look like it actually is behaving. It doesn't say what version of FSR that we are using. I can't really tell here at 1080p native, at least, whether this is an FSR 3 or a machine learning model, but hopefully we'll be able to get that overlay to work at some of our other resolutions. But at 1080p, no issues whatsoever. I mean, I think this would be a totally acceptable way to play. You can imagine how that FPS would probably scale at some different settings here. But, you know, 120 plus FPS experience here at 1080p, no issue whatsoever. I mean, this is a totally great experience. Video memory under 8 gigabytes, pulling around 200 watts. Our RAM usage is high, but that's probably more of a Windows issue than anything. So yeah, 1080p gets a massive pass here. And I was able to get the overlay up so you guys can see there. It does seem to actually be using that FSR4, which is nice. All right, now sticking actually with these same max settings. I don't really see a major purpose to come off of max settings. I mean, we're already getting exceptional FPS, and I actually expect the same to be true here at 1440p, which is what we're moving to now. So sticking with these highest settings here at we'll turn off the FSR to begin with, see if we need it or if we can stomach it with the native setting, but otherwise completely maxed out settings. The only thing that I'm not using is just the motion blur. That's more of a personal preference. Same thing, chromatic aberration. I have that on. You could also turn that off. Most people, I think, turn that off. That's kind of a personal preference thing as well. So let's see what we can get here. 1440p max settings, native resolution. All right, so now moving over to 1440p, obviously looks much better just given the increase in resolution. Still incredibly CPU demanding. I mean, 93% CPU utilization. We are now GPU utilized now, so you know, keep that in mind. I guess that's an improvement in a certain way. Go ahead and start counting here. See if we can still get these really great results that we're getting at 1080p. This seems to be like, it's strange because I want to call this game well optimized because I really do think, I mean, the FPS is undeniable. Native 1440p max settings here, getting 140 FPS, 120 FPS, 1% lows. Frame time graph is very, very smooth. And the game looks beautiful. I mean, it's not like a plain looking game. It's a very, very good looking game. So it is impressive. I'd be curious to see on a different CPU how much, you know, the CPU, just given the fact that it is so much, the utilization is so high, whether or not that's playing a huge factor. But at least to begin with here, definitely no complaints. Looks absolutely phenomenal. The lack of anti-aliasing also not an issue really whatsoever that I can see. I mean, it looks great. Not noticing any sort of like major, you know, stutter stepping or anything. I mean, if we look at like, you know, the railing, it all looks like pretty natural. I mean, if I look really closely, maybe might be a few issues, but like typically where you'd see some of those issues is with like foliage, things like that. Now it certainly helps that in this particular scene, like all that stuff is moving. But, I mean, you can see our FPS, just undeniable, like nearly 200 FPS, 1% lows at 120. This is just a really, really phenomenal experience here. And, yeah, I mean, also this game, you know, this is my first really experience with the game. I haven't really consumed hardly anything about the game. So it is kind of cool to just see. It's a very unique looking game, I will say. You know, first person shooter. Guns looks like super, super interesting. All this, like, you know, design here. I believe this game actually got in trouble for like stealing some art assets. I believe those have all been replaced and the original creators were made right, but I guess that's something to maybe keep in mind if you care about that. I am noticing maybe a slight issue with some anti-aliasing on, like, you can see like the edges of kind of like, I don't know, this is a vehicle or something. Some slight stutter stepping and kind of a weird effect while I'm kind of moving. Not really noticeable whatsoever in actual gameplay, but I wouldn't have any issue playing here at native with no anti-aliasing. I think this looks great. No problem whatsoever. Let's see if we can maybe actually grab some stuff here. And it feels just really great. I mean, Bungie, if Bungie knows how to do anything, they know how to make a first-person shooter feel good. I mean, they're really, you know, it's the king of first-person shooters. I'd say between Halo and Doom, like, those are probably the best looking first person shooters on the market. Or not best looking, but best feeling, like the actual feel of, you know, especially on mouse and keyboard, it just feels really, really great. Not a huge difference when, like, you know, transitioning from indoor to outdoor environments. Seems to be pretty similar. So we can probably clock it around there, about 180 FPS there. Let's see what we can get. Say if we did care about those anti-aliasing issues, which again, I really don't, but if we did want to throw on FSR at native here, so this is just using FSR as a anti-aliasing solution. Let's actually go back to that vehicle over here and see if that edge is kind of resolved. And coming up to it, it's mostly resolved. There's still maybe a little bit of like stutter stepping if I look closely, but I'm really nitpicking at this point. But yeah, I mean, it looks absolutely phenomenal. It's certainly nice to see just how well performing this game is. I mean, you know, I'd be interested to see, and I definitely do want to take a look at this game on lower end hardware too to see if it is still as performant. But 9070 XT, I mean, there's definitely more expensive GPUs, and this is really not leaving anything to be desired. This is pretty much, you know, a perfect experience here. Not really any issues whatsoever. And you know, we obviously you can go in and test some lower settings, but given the fact that our CPU utilization is already so high at maxed out 1440p, I imagine that there may be a bottleneck in that regard. So I don't know how much higher than like around 160, 170. I'm not actually 100% sure how much higher we would realistically be able to get it. But at least, you know, to begin with here, no issues whatsoever. I think this is absolutely phenomenal. In fact, in my opinion, you know, this is a first look. I don't want to get too in depth here, but I don't really see the need to really test anything else. If it runs this good max out settings, I can only imagine if we did go in, kind of cherry pick some of like the lower end settings, which we may have to do at 4K. I mean, this is just, you know, this might end up being kind of a shorter video, but I think this is just an absolutely phenomenal experience here. All right, now moving up to 4K, and for 4K, I do want to just take a pit stop on our way to the highest settings and just test out these medium settings. I don't think this will be a huge difference between medium and high, but I am a little bit curious just to see the actual visual difference. So let's see what we can get here. This is the medium preset here, and then going for just native resolution. So this is no upscaling whatsoever. I really don't think, I might go ahead and turn off motion blur, but I really don't think that this is going to be like that the anti-aliasing, you're going to need it at 4K. I mean, we barely needed it. In fact, I would argue that we really didn't even need it at 1440p. So anyways, this is medium, native, 4K. All right, so 4K medium settings here. To begin with, is pretty solid experience here. So around 150, obviously the no anti-aliasing, no issue whatsoever. I wouldn't even really bother with anti-aliasing, though I will test FSR at native just because why not? It doesn't seem to actually have like a major impact anyways on our performance. But I mean, yeah, this looks phenomenal. I have no, you know, problems with this performance really whatsoever. 150 on our average, 120 on our 1% low. This is actually the first time I've seen this map in the daytime. This looks very, very cool. Indoor areas, outdoor areas, not a huge difference. I know like Arc Raiders in particular and a lot of other games, they have like, you know, slightly different performance depending on whether you're in an indoor or outdoor environment. Doesn't really seem to be the case here. Seems to kind of, well, I have no idea what that was, but is that another player? What was that? Anyways, no idea, but seems to kind of be pretty consistent across the board here. Let's go ahead and, this is my shield, right? There you go. So around 150 to 160 FPS, and oh, maybe it's this up. Is this what's hurting me? I will say though that going down from the highest to medium settings is not really very different as far as like just the general visuals that I'm experiencing. Oh, looks like I am dying here, so that's a problem. Yeah, I don't know if it's just this game or this like particular art style, but it seems to be pretty similar as far as like the visuals between high and medium here. Looks pretty much the same. I mean, it does kind of like a flat stylistic art style, so I mean, it still looks good at medium settings. I really don't, you know, I don't know if I would really be able to personally tell the difference unless, you know, I was personally, if I was told the difference, I don't think I'd be able to tell just on my own. This looks like essentially just about the same. Very, very strong looking image here. So right around 162. I just want to kind of clock that to see the difference when we do move up to those higher settings. But I mean, I don't know. I guess there's a few different ways to look at it. You know, if there's not a huge difference, may as well play on medium. But if there is not a huge difference in FPS, then you may as well just play on high, and maybe you'll notice it sometimes. CPU utilization is still very, very, very high. That is very interesting to see here. It seems to be pretty consistently high, regardless of really what we've done here. I don't think we've been able to get the CPU utilization very low. Definitely 4K max settings will presumably be the time where our CPU utilization will dip the lowest, given the fact that that's just going to be our most graphically demanding setting. So at that point, I'm assuming that our graphics card will be the bottleneck, but we'll certainly have to take a look at that. But this is native 164, so let's see what we can get here just using this medium preset. And let's just go ahead and let's throw on FSR at native here just to see if that does have any sort of meaningful difference here as far as our FPS. And remember, we're around 162 on our average now. Did start raining, so there is a different weather effect, so that may come into play here as far as our FPS, but it does look like a pretty, not a huge difference, but around a 20 FPS difference applying that FSR native. So FSR native is basically the same as DLAA. It's just using that machine learning technology to just apply anti-aliasing, but still rendering and outputting the image at the same resolution at our native resolution here. So very, very strong looking picture. Don't notice a huge difference. Again, I don't think you really need anti-aliasing at 4K, and especially I wouldn't, opt for FSR, just given the fact that it is a more demanding form of anti-aliasing. When we, in my opinion, don't really need anti-aliasing at all. Probably wouldn't go for this, but again, 160 to 130, it's not a super noticeable difference as far as just like what I'm experiencing playing the game. So if this picture looks sharper to you, then go for it. Now let's see what we can get here. If we did just want to say, hey, let's throw on some upscaling, I just want to get more FPS, so let's just go ahead. We can throw on, we can even go all the way down here to ultra performance. So I'll go ahead and apply that, see if that really makes a meaningful difference. Again, we're CPU bound, so I don't expect it to be a super meaningful difference. But we are at 4K, so I actually don't expect it to be a very big difference as far as the image quality either. So it definitely does look a little bit softer, quite a bit softer here, I will say, but FPS is obviously improved here, now seeing around 180. So, you can kind of pick and choose what you are wanting to prioritize. I think this is a pretty strong experience regardless. I mean, medium settings, my main takeaway here is just the game still looks really solid at medium settings. So, depending on your GPU. If you're on a 9070 XT, I would probably say let's wait and see what we can get here with higher settings, because I imagine that we're still going to be able to get pretty solid performance. But it is nice to see that the performance and the visuals are already so good here at medium. All right, now going for the highest settings. So let's go ahead, highest, and then I do just want to independently change just a few settings here. This one over to highest. Turn off motion blur, and at least to begin with here, let's just see what we can get. Just native picture, no FSR. We will check out FSR native just for fun when we get there, but this is just maxed out 4K settings. So obviously pretty demanding settings in most games. This game and this particular GPU has handled it just fine. Let's see if that continues here. All right, so now at completely maxed out 4K. I believe this is where we were originally getting around 160 on medium settings. It's now completely maxed out settings, saying around 100. So this is the first time that we're not in that like kind of, what I like to call that roughly competitive 120 FPS plus range. And we are also not CPU bound. We are 100% GPU utilization. However, we are still incredibly high CPU utilization. So I don't know. I mean, I'll have to see how this shakes out when I do test other GPUs, if I can get the CPU utilization down regardless of the of the GPU I use. I mean, this is a powerful GPU. You can see obviously based on the performance that it is pushing a ton of frames. This just seems to be an incredibly CPU heavy experience. Now, it's not making the CPU very hot, so I'm not sure if it's actually pulling a lot of wattage or if it's just kind of if it's really just putting the CPU to work. In that case, that's totally fine, if it uses the CPU. But I mean, the game looks absolutely gorgeous here, I will say. I mean, the 4K native max settings, I would like to see maybe a side-by-side. I'm sure there will be videos like that, kind of like, pan wipe or something like that. But I can't tell a huge difference, looks great in medium, still looks really good here. Obviously, some of the weather effects that we weren't seeing on the medium preset and that we are seeing now are certainly helping here, as I definitely do not know all these different hazards that are going on all over the place. But yeah, incredibly strong performance. Looks like we are climbing a little bit now, getting kind of a little bit acclimated. Our CPU utilization is still very high, so some games like Fortnite's a example that I like to use, where it starts off incredibly CPU demanding, and then over a period of time it gets a little bit lighter after you do play the game a bit. This doesn't seem to be the case here. It kind of seems to be just a CPU demanding game. It kind of stays CPU demanding pretty much all the way through. It doesn't look like even after quite a bit of gameplay here, our CPU is really getting much of a break. Getting around 128, so there is certainly a difference when it comes to our FPS between medium and high settings, though it's not super significant. Video memory usage did increase, I believe, by about like 2 gigabytes, so just kind of slightly, again, not super significant. Likely wouldn't cause a major issue for most graphics cards. Even if we didn't have 16 gigabytes, I don't think we would be in a huge world of hurt here if we only had 8 gigabytes, but as I definitely did not mean to agitate those enemies. But yeah, pretty solid performance here, 130. So we did kind of climb back into that competitive type range. Let's see what we can get if we did say, let's throw on our FSR native here and see if we can apply this before dying here. Okay, go ahead and start counting. So this does drop our FPS slightly here. I mean, still pretty good. We'll see how this kind of shakes out. This is pretty much right where we started initially, so I'll be interested to see if we run around a little bit, if it does kind of improve, but still kind of in that competitive neighborhood, a little bit under that 120. We'll kind of move maybe into a more indoor environment here and see if it improves at all. We can kill a few of these Roblox characters here that this game has, but pretty close to competitive experience. I mean, me personally, I just kind of say 120 FPS is kind of where I like to call a game competitive. It doesn't actually mean anything. It's just kind of a bit of a loose bar I kind of like to use. But obviously, if you're looking for a competitive experience, if you're hovering around like 110 to 115, kind of right around where we are, I don't think many people would, say that is going to ruin their experience or anything like that. But, if you are one of those people, then maybe it would here. But as we die there. But yeah, I mean, overall, game looks great. I don't think you need the more advanced version of FSR. I guess we can try to revive ourselves here. I think like the no anti-aliasing honestly looks just as good. And in some ways, it may sound kind of weird, but in some ways, like any of the issues that you might be experiencing with the poor anti-aliasing almost makes the game look a little bit sharper on some of those edges. Around 110, I guess we can see, again, we are at 4K, so anti-aliasing, and especially, when we're using FSR, that upscaling, this is really where it shines, because at 4K, you can really apply pretty aggressive upscaling and get pretty great visual results. And it does seem to be giving us well beyond that kind of competitive range. So this is another way to kind of get up to that like around 180 neighborhood. So yeah, I mean, overall 1% lows across the board, across all tests here, really impressive in general. It seems to be a really well optimized game. The only thing that's a bit strange, and the only reason I'm kind of hesitant to say that it's well optimized is I am curious to see with a lesser CPU if it is hamstrung, because it is obviously really putting our 9800X3D here to work. Anyways, guys, that's been it for Marathon on the 9070 XT. Incredible results, really good looking game, good support for FSR and FSR3, FSR4. So, good 1% lows. Game looks beautiful, really performs pretty well across the board. No issues whatsoever. You can really come in here, play this game 1080p all the way up to 4K and get really great results regardless of how you do it, whether that's using lesser settings or using, some aggressive or not so aggressive upscaling. A lot of different options to choose from here. So, we'll see how this kind of shakes out. I am curious to see how it performs on different CPUs. Only thing is just very CPU heavy game. So we'll have to wait and see kind of, whether or not that is a huge factor in this game. If it is just incredibly CPU bound or CPU dependent, that would be interesting. But at least to begin with here, if you have a strong CPU, you have a decent GPU, you're going to have a great experience in Marathon. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.